Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology, now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Carnops, and this is the February Room.
Do not underestimate the guy or gal tying on your bugs, even if those hands are a little shaky. Fishing guides come from all walks of life, are often highly overeducated and or multi-talented individuals who have simply become addicted to fly fishing and concede to a life on the water. My guest today is a former guide who, as we'll discover, harbors a multitude of hidden talents. Mike Barber, welcome to the February Room.
Thank you, Justin.
Well, it's good to hear your voice, my friend.
Long time no hear.
True. Very true. We don't get to hang out and run around on the lower access road as much as we used to running chili thighs.
Indeed. Yeah.
Well, before we dive into who you are, can you please share one of the gems from the annals of Mike Barber, fly fisherman for us, please?
Absolutely. I thought about this one for a while, and I thought, one of the funnest trips I've been on during my guide years on the lower Deschutes was a fun trip, actually. And it was the summer I had my back surgery and missed the best steelhead season we had, which I believe was 2009, maybe it was 2010. So finally, at the end of the summer, it's September, I was given the okay to row a boat, go fishing, be a little crazy with my back. And so I talked my buddy Dave into going on a little 2.5 day float down the Deschutes between Trout Creek and Maupin. We ended up putting on about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, fished 3 or 4 runs. Dave got 1 fish, little disappointing after hearing all the great numbers and catch rates. Ended up going to camp that night, of course, draining a few cold ones. Getting up first light the next morning, started off and, we're getting a fish in every run. And as you know, when you're steelhead fishing and the fishing is good, the beers tend to flow. And as they flowed, we realized we're going to run out of beer before we get to the boat ramp. And by the end of the day, we had hooked 15 or 16 fish between the two of us, which is, as you know, is incredible steelhead fishing. So waking up the next morning, we made a pact. All right, we've got 11 beers left between the two of us. And nobody gets a beer until we hook 10 fish. We ended up doing that in the first 2 runs. And so it's 9 o'clock in the morning. And ended up hooking another 14 fish that day, including 2 doubles. And I had 2 where I got them on back-to-back casts. That was in the last run of the last one was my last cast. My last 2 casts, I caught steelhead and Don and Lola's. So ended up 2.5 days, 31 fish between the two of us, and one of the most incredible steelhead experiences in my life. So they're kind of like unicorns these days, I hear. So don't get to see that. It's kind of like the grandpa story. Back in my day, we used to catch them all the time. But
it wasn't even that long ago.
It's just a decade ago, or a little over a decade ago. So, yeah, that's my fishing story, my happy-go-lucky fishy story.
Man, that's those days on the Deschutes are as you mentioned, kind of feel like a thing of the past right now. But Yeah, if you were fortunate enough to be on the river a lot during that period with those historic runs and had a pretty good inkling of what you were doing, you could put together some pretty epic fishing trips. But man, I've never had a 34 fish trip on the Deschutes before. I can definitely say that.
Yeah, it was. I've never had anything like it before it or after it. Incredible, and yeah, today's numbers just don't hold up to that. Maybe there'll be a turnaround one of these
Right,
years.
right, man.
So, so
Well, yeah, definitely. It certainly can. There were a lot of lean years before the bonanza years that we experienced. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
just yep, yep. There's reason for optimism for sure. Looks like the numbers are a little better this year, enough to at least open the season. Do you have plans to go?
I do. I'm waiting for the second. I'm not quite sure. They opened it August 15th. And if they keep it, if enough numbers pass through, I believe it's the Dalles Dam, they will keep it open past September 15th. And so I'm kind of waiting for that September 15th number. Just, I want to make sure there's enough. I'm not trying to get down there and get in the mix and try to, jump on a steelhead if there aren't that many. It's just, I can wait another year if the numbers aren't good enough. I owe the river that much respect. So that's my feeling on that one. But if the numbers come through on the 15th, I plan on getting down there, at least 5 or 6 days. So
Cool, cool. So I didn't know they were doing that. It's kind of just I knew it opened on the 15th, but it's just kind of like a trial basis, and they're just kind of
I
taking it
believe that's,
slowly.
it's something I don't know it 100%, but they will keep it open if they meet a second quota of fish. So hopefully that's what the case.
So explain this one to me. How come on the Deschutes they are being so careful with that steelhead run, yet to the south you can bonk a wild fish?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Does anybody know the answer to that one?
I don't know. You think the state would have, um, and it's all run by, BLM, Fish and Wildlife. You'd think they'd get together and make it a statewide policy, but I assume just like you can still fish in, the Grand Ron. I know they can't bunk fish there, but fishing was open all last year. So,
Right.
but yeah, man, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, me too, of course, but it just seems really counterintuitive
Yeah, I
and
agree.
fundamentally ridiculous, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I mean, we were just up in Alaska, and man, I lucked into this. I caught this gorgeous steelhead up there that I didn't expect to catch, and so I was asking the guide about steelhead, up in the area that we were fishing on the Kenai Peninsula, and yeah, you can't keep wild fish anywhere up there.
Doesn't make any sense to me. So I just don't. And then I also don't understand the whole wanting to take the wild fish either. For whatever reason. Yeah, I just don't get it. They're so beautiful, and I don't know. There's better fish to eat, anyways. I think. So I'd
Yeah,
rather have
right,
a
right. Well,
bass. I'd rather have a bass taco, right? Some whitefish, and there's plenty
yeah,
of
I'd
bass
take.
around here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's it's just folks are set in their ways. Is I think
Yeah,
probably a big part of it.
yeah.
They've been harvesting wild steelhead their entire lives, and don't see any reason to stop now, even though there's none left or very few left. Or
Yeah,
they're
yeah, I think
struggling
that's true.
anyway. So,
There's people have a hard time changing their minds about issues like that. So, what do you do?
what do you
Well,
do? So,
you hope that people change, and ocean conditions get better, river conditions get better. Maybe it doesn't get quite as hot in the summer. We know we're fighting that, uh, but yeah, I don't have the answers for so many of those questions, just like I don't believe our scientists have a lot of the answers yet. So
Right, right. So you're done guiding now, right? It's over. It was a grand career.
grand career. I came out of retirement in 2021 to come back and do a season. Just with COVID and all things of the last couple years, I needed some work, and I had it was a great season of guiding. I ended up being as busy or busier than I ever was, the decade before. Guided the Deschutes, April, May, June, and then I went out and guided for 4 trips on the Grand Ron at the end of June, which was an amazing experience and the first time that I was able to do that in my life. So it was really fun, but it's hard work guiding out there, getting in and out of the boat, having people that can't walk and wade in the water makes it a really tough experience on a guide.
Yeah, I think the Deschutes is one of the hardest places to guide that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's not, if you don't, it's rare to find a 70-year-old man that can hop down the river and you don't really have to worry about them falling in.
Well, and you worked for one of those longtime outfitters that had kind of a client base that was getting on in years by the time you joined that outfit. Now, after you were my kind of right hand man when I was outfitting down there, and then after I left, you went to work for I think a number of outfitters, but one of them was Lynn Sawyer, and those guys. They had like a bunch of like octogenarians and stuff for clients.
What is it for 90? Noctogenarian? But yeah, a lot of 70, 80, 90-year-old guys. And, the greatest thing about, and most of them didn't really, at that time, they were just happy to be there, but still wanted to try to catch some fish. And what's funny is when Lynn retired, 95% of his clients retired with him. So they just were like, all right, Lynn's done. We're done too. A few of them still stuck around and went on to some different outfitters that actually still, float the river with some guys that are working down there. But for the most part, they retired also. So maybe one of my best experiences as a guide with Lynn was we used to take a bunch of doctors from Stanford University, and I'm struggling to remember the guy's name, but I took him for 7 or 8 years, maybe 9 years, and he always fished a bamboo 8-weight and could cast it once he was stable, he could cast it a mile. And I just said, "Hey, why are you not moving down the run?" And he mumbled something to me. I could not keep stepping, and he finally turns around and he's like, "There's a fish at the end of my line. I'm gonna get it." And this 89-year-old ended up landing this steelhead on a swung fly with a bamboo rod, which was at the old barking dog. So.
That's awesome, man. I was gonna ask you, I always wondered when you were doing that, what that experience was like taking that many elderly folks down that river, because it's super hard and you have to probably pick the spots that you fish pretty carefully.
Very carefully. And, there's probably a few of those guys that had been on that river more than I had.
Right.
So they'd be like, "Hey, would you mind pulling in at the next hummock? Because it's way easier for me to walk there." Oh, okay. Yeah, you got it.
So it was a pretty mellow, low-key operation for the most part, though, right? Like everyone was just kind of there to have a good time, do a little fishing, and enjoy that beautiful stretch of river.
Lynn would always say, "We're going We're going camping, and we're going to do a little fishing."
There you go.
And one of the most laid-back camps. We never had a speed. Never were 2 baggers. Just minimal. No tablecloth. Everybody ate sitting on a chair in their lap with their plate in the lap. We didn't ever not get one camp we wanted. And Nathan would never, our bagger at the time, would never pass us until 11 o'clock or 12. And we always got our camps. I don't know. Maybe people just stayed away because they knew we were going to stay.
Yeah,
So.
People probably, they knew the camps that Lynn wanted, and he'd been there long enough. He'd earned that respect. You were
absolutely,
unless you were some young guy who didn't know better, then you'd stay out of that.
And then Lynn would have a talking to him.
Yeah, and you'd get a talking to. Yeah, I remember one of the best talking tos. I was working with Roger Carbone, and there was some bagger. So we were pulled in. Oh man, my memory's so bad for camps. We were pulled in below Whitehorse on the right. What was the name of that sweet camp in there? Way
by the
down,
trail,
all the way at the bottom of Lower Whitehorse on River Right there.
Davidson.
Thank you.
North Junction.
Davidson. Yeah. Thank you. So we were pulled in at Davidson, and we were setting up to have lunch at Davidson. Roger liked to do like a barbecue kind of extended long lunch, and hopefully the clients would drink some wine and fall asleep for a while, kind of deal.
Don't spook the herd, as he used to say.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, we were in there setting up for lunch, and this bagger, this great big blonde kid, looked like a professional wrestler, starts pulling in there and to set up his camp. And Roger's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? He's like, well, we're going to camp here. He's like, well, that's fine and dandy. You're more than welcome to camp here, but we're having lunch here, and you're not going to set up your camp while we're enjoying our lunch. And, here I thought this guy Roger was obviously an intimidating character and didn't take any grief from anybody. But I was like, man, this kid might have something to say about that. But he didn't. He turned around and went right back to his raft and just sat there and waited. And I thought it was pretty funny, though, because I was like, well, I mean, what really difference does it make if this guy's setting up camp 100 yards from where we're having lunch? But Roger wasn't having it.
Yeah, you might wake him up.
That's true. Good point. All about spooking the herd.
Didn't want the tent poles clanging around.
Right. Didn't want to spook the herd. So prior to your guiding, you were a musician,
yes.
and played in a funk band. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about that experience and that portion of your life?
Sure. Well, as it turns out, I'm a third-generation touring musician. My father was, and so was my grandfather in the 30s. I played trumpet. I played in a band called Rubberneck, and then another really big band that I played in the 90s was a band called Unshakable Race. And they were kind of a reggae/pop band. And I was lucky enough to see the country playing music. Didn't always make great money, but I made it. And we we traveled all through the West, East Coast, West Coast, Mid-America. But when we were on the West Coast, and especially in the Rockies, 14 Western states, I always brought my fly rods with me. And so I would get a chance to go fishing, mostly in Montana and Colorado. But great experience. Got to meet a lot of really cool musicians, a lot I still keep in contact with today. Yeah, I think back on those experiences, and I only see the good ones now. So
nice.
There were a lot of times I was like, F this. I will tell you one funny story about traveling. We were probably gone. This is with Rubberneck, and I think we were on tour for about 7 weeks, and we played all the way across the country and back. And we had trouble with our tour bus driver. Like, he got in a fight with our drummer. He was a real ass. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. Anyways, we're on our way home, and we're in the middle of Evanston, Wyoming, southern Wyoming.
Sure.
at a truck stop. It's middle of winter. The bus is being filled up. We all hop off, go in and get a snack, drink, whatever, and come back outside the store. And I'm sitting there with our keyboard player, and I'm like, "Hey, isn't that our bus going up the freeway on ramp?" And the dude stranded us in Evanston, Wyoming.
He
I guess
did.
he'd had enough of Rubberneck. So it turns out our drummer, his brother at the time was I can't think of his brother's name, but his last name was Foxworth, and he was the police chief here in Portland. And they finally found the bus. He'd made it all the way back to Portland without, like, there was APBs out for the. I mean, how could you miss a big tour bus, right? But like, because of our drummer's connections, there were cops looking for him in Utah, Idaho, and Oregon. And he made it all the way back to Oregon, but when he was found, I guess it wasn't very nice because about 17 Portland police cars loaded up on him when he was found. And we ended up getting our stuff back. But it was a tough way to get back from Evanston, Wyoming to Portland, Oregon. So,
Did you guys have more shows you were supposed to play between Evanston?
luckily, no, we were just coming back. So we had been coming back from somewhere. Maybe it was Denver, right? Like Denver was our last show or something. And then, so we ended up, luckily one of our band members was from Wyoming. His parents came and got some of us. We had some friends in Salt Lake that came and got some of us. And then we went to Salt Lake and flew back to Portland.
Yeah,
So,
good old Evanston. That's where we used to go to get kegs when I went to school in Salt Lake at the University of Utah.
just right up over the border.
Right, yeah, and I ended up getting a bootlegging ticket for having a keg. So I'm a convicted bootlegger in Utah.
running state lines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. He just had enough and up and left you guys. That's amazing that he drove that far and was still just it never occurred to him to maybe turn around, or he just never had a change of heart.
Yeah, he was, to be honest, he was a real jerk. So,
Well, that's cool. What a great way to see the country, though, and to have your gear with you and be able to fly fish all those places too is awesome.
yeah, it was so lucky enough to get to see a lot of the war, at least the United States that way.
And then another passion of yours, a lifelong passion, is golf. And you still play golf fairly frequently?
do.
I think you were playing yesterday or something. You told me.
Yeah, I still play. Yeah, I try to play as much as possible. Still, if I play too much, my back gets screwed up. But yeah, I went into the golf business for a while. Went back to school, got a sports degree in sports management, and trying to run golf clubs, and did that for a while. And then life takes turns again. Get married, go into the trucking industry, get divorced.
Get out of the trucking industry.
Get out of the trucking industry.
So there's, as you know, I'm not a big golfer. I used to play a little bit, but I haven't played in a long time. But I certainly can appreciate the similarities between the golf swing and the fly cast. Do you think that's kind of part of the reason why you were so attracted to like spay casting and fly fishing in general is due to the athletic component of it?
That's a good question. There are if you break down, body movements in the golf swing and and the fly cast, they're very similar. You have to, stable lower body. I'm trying to think of my big golf words right now, but none are coming. You have to do things in order, right? Your body
Right.
has to work in synchronicity to be able to make the perfect fly cast or the perfect golf swing. So I'm sure that did have something to do with it. And I know when I did go into it, thinking, look, I've been teaching fly casting for, a dozen years. I'm just switching sports to teach. I just need to learn the technology or not the terminology to be able to go to teaching golf.
Right.
So they are very similar. And, I'm sure that had something to do with it. That I've always liked sport, man. I went to 2 professional soccer games this weekend here in Portland. It's
Yeah.
just, I like sports. So yeah, I'm sure that had quite a bit to do with it.
Yeah, it's I know, for a while down there on the Deschutes, we were seeing all sorts of PGA golfers and stuff showing up when the Spay thing was big.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first time where I was like, huh, there's obviously a lot of crossover and connection between these two sports. And, since I obviously I developed, it's one of the first teaching tools I go to when I'm with somebody that's kind of new to the sport is I ask them if they play golf, and
Hmm.
often the answer is yes, and then you can really compare those two sports and in your teaching method and find a lot of similarities that you can use to explain things to people. I think it really straightens the learning curve.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And just to show you how much golf and fishing is interactive, we know him as the big thirsty guy, but I was just up. He invited me to play a golf tournament for the Washington Surveyors Association fundraising event,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at a place in Bremerton, Washington called Trophy Lake Golf and Casting. Beautiful little golf course in Bremerton with giant trout in all the ponds. They had rental fly rods right next to rental golf clubs, and so you could just grab a golf cart if you wanted and go out there and try to catch these things. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool. The golf course that I worked at in Bend back in the day, they planted like big Kamloops rainbows in their
Mm.
main pond. They're out in front of the clubhouse,
Hmm.
and then like the side ponds had bass in them. And so yeah, I'd go out there and just on Monday when we were able to play the course for free, I'd throw my fly rod in my golf bag and just go poach. Although I spent way more time fishing than I did playing golf, that was
Sure.
really just an excuse to poach the golf course ponds. So it was awesome. Man, every golf course has fish in the water. I think it's everyone
They
I've seen.
they should.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, you've also volunteered your services as a facts checker on this podcast. On some of the previous episodes, you've brought to my attention that there's been some discrepancies in the facts. So, if you could clear up a couple of those for us, man, we'd appreciate it.
Well, I think this is your very first podcast. Not sure if it was your first one, but you were discussing your very last trip guiding on the Deschutes,
Yeah, that was the first episode, right?
and you just got a couple names wrong. That's it.
Well, let's
I
clear it
think
up here.
okay. So it was the trip with you and Taylor and Roger Carbone and his son who was bagging,
That was Roger's
uh,
son that was bagging.
or Roger's stepson, I believe. And this is when we had the Caviar Boys and the really, really aloof, I don't want to call them idiots, but the 2 kids that were in your boat the whole time. When
Mm-hmm.
you had to leave your boat at Patagonia Rock to jump into the water to save the kid because
Mm-hmm.
you told him, don't move. And well, what's he do? He moves. He's in the water, swimming. And a wooden boat picked you up. That was Cy Happy, not Court Christensen, as you probably now know.
Yep. Cy Happy.
And
So thank you out there, Cy, and I apologize for missing that all important detail. That it was in fact
but
you that saved us and may have saved my life, and not Court
Yeah,
Christensen.
no. And that was the trip. Also, I took off with what Roger always call them, free bobbers. Like if they came on the trip for free, like if somebody else paid for them, Roger didn't like them very much. So, and one of the octogenarians at breakfast said, "I'm going to go downstream, and will you pick me up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just stay. Don't go above camp." Well, the guy went above camp. I rode to. This was all in the same day. I rode to. I got to Whiskey Dick from what's the camp that used to be there? Anyways, well, the guy somehow went back upstream and got above us, and so I thought the guy was like dead. And
Are you talking about Wing Dam?
Yeah, thank you, Wingdam.
Yeah, I remembered one. Wow.
The guy ended up getting above camp somehow, and I rode all the way to Whiskey. Couldn't find the guy. Running back up the tracks, going, "Roger, we got a dead guy here." And then here comes a guy back into camp, and it's just like, ugh, whatever. And then remember passing you down, and this is after your little incident. I think you'd had it with those two boys after the little swimming in the whitewater.
Right.
Down on by Hernando's Hideaway, a little island, and you had your shirt off, and the dude had stuck you in the back with a giant stonefly that you just couldn't get out of your back. And at this point, I knew, like, man, I don't think Carnup's going to make this trip. I don't think
he's not coming back.
I think he's about to row out of here.
He's not coming back. Yeah.
So,
Do you remember the sit down that Carbone had with the clients at the dinner table?
And then nothing changed.
No, none of it went to
Nothing
heart.
changed. Yeah, the safety. Like, look, and that's the one thing I really do appreciate about Roger. Like, he was all about safety, right? Like, let's not. He had a program. And
yes,
if you
he
messed
did.
up
Yeah.
if you messed up his program, he was not happy.
Right. Yeah.
The joke was we didn't believe Carbone had lanterns because the dishes would be done before the sun went down.
Right.
Like, and then he would just sneak off to wherever he snuck off to.
Yep.
And see you in the morning.
Bedtime.
So, bedtime. So.
Yep. It was a good program.
It was a good program. I don't think there's anything I should have listened to that one, but I think that's the gist of it.
All right. Well, that's not so bad.
No. It wasn't like you were lying.
No, right? Yeah, no. The details were just fuzzy, and I didn't know Cy Happy very well, and I didn't know Court very well, and they both kind of have unusual names, so it was an easy mix-up.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. Well, awesome, Mike. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Looking forward to spending some more time with you here. We got to get you back out here. You came out and fished the Missoula area with me a long time ago. But I got a better handle on things now. You need to come out here and
I would love to. Maybe this fall.
Spend some time. That'd be fun, man. We go swing some flies.
Okay. I do have one pretty funny story about us fishing together back then.
Please.
It was spring. Rivers were cold. I think we were with the Wisco kid.
Yeah.
And I was fishing in the front of the boat. And it's runoff time, so I was fishing one of your gobble worms.
Were we on the big hole?
No,
we went to the big hole on that trip.
That was when your dog crapped.
That was when the dog crapped in the boat. But
we fished.
Okay, yeah, we fished the Bitterroot before and the Clark Fork before, I think. So, okay, sorry, go ahead.
And we bumped a rock or something. I was standing up in front of the boat and went in. Boom! Just tumbled into the boat.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that was a cold day.
and then I was like, "Geez, help me!" And then all I could hear is you guys yelling, "Stand up! Stand up!" I was in about like thigh high water.
Oh man! Oh, that was epic.
we used to do.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. How do I forget about that, man? That's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of this podcast. Is you talk to various people and they remind you of these things. And like, oh yeah,
that just one popped in my head. So,
oh, that was classic. That was so funny, man.
Young. Right. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah, in the blink of an eye, no doubt.
In the blink of an eye.
Thanks again for joining us. I'd ask for your contact info, but I don't think you want to be found.
I don't really want to be found.
I didn't think so. All right, buddy. Be well.
Those who know.
Yeah, exactly. They know how to find you.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns. And if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.